Hi, welcome to another edition of Cooking with Katie from Cookery Doodle Doo. So we're going to make marble cakes today. So these are little cupcakes that are half vanilla and half chocolate, and we're going to swirl them together so that they basically look like the beautiful colourful bit in the middle of a marble where all the different glass strands are twisted together. That's kind of what they're going to look a little bit like in the middle. So we're going to start with a very basic cupcake mixture, then we're going to divide it in half and flavour half with chocolate and then put them back together again. So let's just start with our basic cupcake mixture here. So it's equal quantities of everything basically by weight. So I've got 60 grams of butter in here. You can see that's lovely and soft, really easy to stir together. And into my 60 grams of butter, I'm going to put 60 grams of sugar, that's caster sugar. In it goes. And I'm just going to give that a mix together. Like so, very simple. So that's our 60 grams of butter and our 60 grams of sugar mixed together. I'm now going to do one egg, which, as you know from working with me before, is also about 60 grams. I'm going to tap and crack it in exactly the same way I do every time. So 2 stages, we're going to tap and listen, and then we'll have a look for the hole. So let's tap. Okay, there's the sound that lets us know the shell's broken. So we find that hole, we give it a thumbs up, the thumbs have a little kiss. They go into the hole together, but then they have an argument in the egg. So they come away from each other, bringing the shell with them. And that's our egg separated exactly the same way we always do it. Just give my hands a quick wipe on my cloth. And then I'm just going to use a fork. I'm going to whisk up my egg a little bit, just to make it easier to stir in. So once the yellow and the white are all the same colour, that's ready to tip in. Go, and stirring slowly to begin with so we don't get all splashed. Just going to mix that together. Okay, so that's mixed. We're going to add our 60 grams of self-raising flour. So in that goes. Just stirring slowly to begin with, otherwise we get a cloud of flour in our faces. And there we go. It's a very basic, normal cupcake mixture. Okay, so we know we've got in there 60 grams of everything. We've got 60 grams of butter, 60 grams of sugar, a 60 gram egg, and 60 grams of flour. So that is absolutely a basic cupcake mixture. We're just going to put the vanilla in first because vanilla goes very well with chocolate. So before I divide it into the two, I'm going to put my vanilla in as well. So I've got my vanilla extract here. I'm just going to put in a teaspoon, but it is a good generous proper teaspoon measure, as you can see. As we've done before, you could use a cowpole syringe for this if you wanted to, or a medicine spoon, anything that gives you the full 5 millilitres. Normal teaspoons tend to be a bit smaller than that in reality, so for baking it's always good to get a proper measure. Okay, so I'm just going to stir that through, and if we ignore the fact that that's gone in, because it's only a relatively small amount, we know we've got 4 lots of 60 grams in here. So those of you who are old enough to be able to work that out, 4 lots of 6 is 24. So there's about 240 grams in here, just over because of the vanilla. And we're going to separate half of this mixture out. So half of this mixture, half of 240, hopefully you've got there before me, is about 120. Okay, so if you've got some digital scales, this is really easy. If it's not, you can just do it by eye. It doesn't matter, you don't have to be completely exact. I'm just going to go and grab my scales. From over here. Okay, so into this bowl, which is set to 0, you don't have to have 2 bowls exactly the same like I do here. We're going to put 120 grams, or about half if you're doing it by eye, of our cupcake mixture. There we go, that's about half. So that one's going to stay like that as the vanilla flavour. This one, we're going to add our cocoa to. So I've got some cocoa powder here. I'm just going to take a 1 tablespoon measure of the cocoa powder, and I'm going to use my knife just to level that off. If you put in too much, it'll be bitter, but we obviously do want it to taste lovely and chocolatey, particularly as it's going to be half and half in this cake. So in that cocoa goes, and again very slowly to begin with, so I don't get a cloud of cocoa in my face this time. You could go from a very white face to a very brown face very quickly doing this. I'm just going to mix that through. Going to use that knife I have just to scrape my spoon off, because what you tend to do is get a lot of butter just stuck to the spoon there. We want to mix that in. Make sure we've got all our mixture lovely and chocolatey. Right, there we go. So those are our 2 mixtures. I'm just going to use a teaspoon now to scrape this off, which I could have used earlier, but there we go. I'm going to leave that teaspoon in there and put a clean teaspoon in the vanilla flavour, and we're just going to put those 2 to one side for a minute, and we're going to get our tin ready. Okay, so I've got quite deep muffin cases and a muffin tin here. If you've got the little fairy cake size with the little bun cases, then this will make more. I would guess about 9, but it's up to you to use your judgment. You just need the case to be about half to 3/4 full. So what we're going to do is just separate these cases out. Now, if they're a bit stuck together, these are nice and separated for me, but if they are a bit stuck together, all you need to do is just get 1 wiggly finger and you just wiggle it on the edge there, and you should just get 1 case and be able to grab it. And if you do that, we call it magic finger in my classes. That magic finger can just find the edge of the cases and help you separate them. Okay, so we've got our 6 cases here, and all we're going to do is alternate blobs of this mixture. So we're going to put blobs of each colour in the cases until all the mixture's gone. Okay, now the easiest way to do that is to get a really big spoonful. Okay, if you get a little teeny tiny spoonful, it's quite hard to get off the spoon. You can see it doesn't really want to fall. If you get a nice big spoonful, it's much happier to plop off. Okay, so we get a nice big spoonful and we just blob it in. Okay, I'm going to go around and put 1 blob of my vanilla mixture into each case. Doesn't matter which colour you start with. We're just going to try and make sure that we've got a similar amount of mixture in each cake case, because then they'll cook equally and evenly. Okay, so now we've got our chocolate mix. We're going to put a blob of that. It's a bit harder to get this off the spoon because it's a bit stiffer with all that cocoa powder in it. But it will come if you get your nice big blob. If you need to use a finger to push it off or another spoon, then obviously you can do that. With the little ones in my classes, we call that scooping and plopping. So we have 2 people with a spoon each. One person's the scooper and the other person's the plopper. So they use 1 spoon to push the mixture off the other. Okay, but that's my 6 cases done there. So I'm going to go around again. I'm going to try not to get it exactly next to the old bit of vanilla. I'm going to try and put it in a different place, on a different side or on top of the brown, because we want to try and mix these up a little bit. So you can see I've got pretty much 2 teaspoons per case. This last one's got perhaps a little bit less of the vanilla, so I'll start with that one when I do the chocolate. There we go. So just go around now with this chocolate mixture. And again, just try and put it in a slightly different place. I have to really scrape for this last one. Don't want one cake smaller than the others. There we go. If you've still got any left, you can just go around and see which one looks like it needs a bit more. But what we're going to do now, just make sure I've got all that in, don't waste any. I'm just going to get that knife I had earlier. And I'm just going to gently swirl around, not too much. We don't want it to all mix together and become the same colour. We just want to swirl them a little bit. It's really tempting to do this too much, and then you just end up with no marble at all. There we go, you'll just end up with a very pale, not very chocolatey mixture. There we go. I'm just going to have a look and see if there's one that's got a bit less than any of the others. I think it's probably that one, so I'll put any spare bits of mixture in there. Right, these now need to go into the oven at 180 degrees, and they're going to take about 15 to 20 minutes depending on how fast your oven is. I know these are about 17 minutes in my oven, but set your timer for 15 and just have a quick look. And what you need to do is give them a prod in the middle and see if they're springy, if they bounce back. If they don't sort of bounce back when you push them, obviously an adult needs to do that very carefully, but if they're not springy, then just put them back in for another couple of minutes and then test them again. Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, so I've briefly lost my cameraman, so I've literally just taken these out of the oven, and I just want to show you, if I put this down on the cooling rack, so I've got a spare hand, these cakes here are just springy. So can you just see that's bouncing back? I think you can probably see if you look at the edges of the cupcake case. You can just see it's kind of springing back into shape again. A different angle. Which one am I looking at? That one there. Okay, so nice and springy. That means they're cooked. So I'm just going to leave them to cool in the tin for a few minutes, and then I will take each case out of the tin and just put that on the rack and let that cool a little bit more. Okay, so these have had a lot longer now to cool down, and you can see the beautiful patterning that we've got from that swirling. So you can see the different stripes of chocolate and then the vanilla are all mixed together. And because I've used clear cake cases, hopefully you can see, or not clear but white, hopefully you can see there's a chocolate bit there, vanilla bit there, chocolate bit there. So right the way round, they're completely swirled and marbled. So they're going to look amazing when we cut into those. So they are delicious just as they are. If you do want to put some icing on them, then this is completely optional. It's up to you, but it is a nice thing to do. So what you can do just while these finish cooling is make yourself a buttercream icing. It's really, really easy to do. You just need the same amount of softened butter as we had before. So 60 grams of butter, lovely and soft the way we had it just to make the cakes, and you need to add double the quantity of icing sugar. So if it's 60 grams of butter, you need 120 grams of icing sugar, and you just mix that together really, really, really well, and that will be a basic buttercream icing. I'm cheating today. I found in my cupboard some pre-made bought vanilla buttercream that I bought for an event just to act as a bit of edible glue, and it was about to go out of date, so I'm going to use that today. That's already vanilla flavoured. So over here, if you have a look here, this is just the normal bought vanilla buttercream. So if you've made your own buttercream, you need to divide it in half, exactly like we did with the cake mixture. And into the vanilla half, you'll need to add some of your own vanilla extract. I would say probably about half a teaspoon, but just maybe put a bit less than that and taste it, and you can always add a bit more. It's obviously easier to add than it is to take away. So you just need to make yourself a little bit of vanilla buttercream, and then we're going to make a chocolate one with the other half here. So again, I've got a little bit more of the basic buttercream here, and I'm just going to add in a teaspoonful of cocoa. There we go, maybe a little bit more. And we're just going to mix that in. But the trick to making a really good chocolatey icing, I discovered a few years ago from somebody much wiser than me, is to actually add a little bit of coffee, and it almost adds as a little bit of a seasoning. So a little bit like adding salt into food. If you just put a little bit of coffee in with chocolate, it tastes much more chocolatey. It doesn't taste of coffee at all. So what I've got here is, you could use an egg cup or anything. I've put half a spoonful of the instant coffee powder, and I've just added a tiny little bit of boiling water. I'm not going to add all of it, I'm just going to add a dribble. And just put that in. So that's a very, very strong coffee mixture. And that will just make that chocolate icing taste way more chocolatey than it would do with just the cocoa in. Okay. So just like before, we've got our chocolate and our vanilla flavoured buttercreams. I'm going to get a cupcake. I'm going to get a bit messy, hopefully not too messy. I'm just going to put a couple of little blobs, maybe not all that separate from each other, with a different finger or a different person if available. A couple of blobs of the vanilla. And I suggest when you're doing this, you go around and do all of the cakes first. I'm just going to do one to show you. And then you can just get, excuse my mucky fingers, I'm just going to go and do the others in a minute, but just to show you first, you can do exactly like we did with the cake mixture and just give it a bit of a swirl, and you'll end up with your marble effect. Can't put the spoon back in the pot now, but there we go. Those are our marble cupcakes with an optional marble buttercream icing. I really hope you enjoy them.